Maybe we're better as friends. That's how my Tuesday morning started. No warning. No build-up. No long emotional speech about feelings drifting apart. Just that sentence dropped into the kitchen like it belonged there between coffee and breakfast. My name is Daniel. I'm 31 years old, and up until that moment I thought my life was moving in a pretty clear direction. Lauren and I had been living together for almost 2 years in a small apartment in Portland. It wasn't anything glamorous. Second floor, slightly crooked wooden stairs, and a bakery downstairs that filled the hallway with the smell of cinnamon every morning around 6. Honestly, I loved the place. Most mornings followed the same quiet routine. I'd wake up around 7, start the coffee maker, open my laptop at the small wooden table by the window, and check emails before work officially started. I worked remotely for a tech company based in Seattle, so my mornings were slow and predictable. Lauren usually woke up a little later. And normally when she walked into the kitchen, she looked like someone who had just rolled out of bed and declared war on mornings. Oversized hoodie, messy bun, and the pair of gray sweatpants she'd claimed from my closet sometime last winter. But that morning was different. At first I noticed it because of the silence. Lauren had been in the bedroom for almost 20 minutes, and the faint sounds drifting into the kitchen weren't the usual sleepy rustling. I could hear drawers opening, the hair dryer, the faint click of a makeup case. I glanced toward the hallway once or twice but didn't think too much about it. Maybe she had a meeting. Maybe she was going out with friends later. Then she finally stepped into the kitchen. And I immediately realized this wasn't a normal Tuesday. Lauren was wearing a light summer dress, blue, with small white flowers. I remembered it because she'd worn it once to a friend's birthday dinner last year. Her hair was styled, makeup done carefully, and she looked like someone who was heading somewhere that mattered. I looked up from my laptop. "You going somewhere?" I asked. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked over to the counter, poured herself a cup of coffee, and leaned against the edge of the kitchen island. For a few seconds she just stared into the mug like she was organizing her thoughts. When she finally looked at me, her expression was strangely calm. Not nervous. Not guilty. Just settled. Then she said it. "Maybe we're better as friends." For a moment my brain stalled. The sentence didn't even sound real. It felt like hearing the middle of a conversation without the beginning. "Friends?" I repeated slowly. Lauren shrugged lightly, blowing across the top of her coffee before taking a sip. "I've just been thinking a lot lately," she said. "About us. About what I want." There was something almost rehearsed about the way she spoke. Like she'd practiced the lines before saying them out loud. Most people expect a certain reaction when they drop a sentence like that into a relationship. Shock. Anger. Arguments. Questions. But the strange thing was, I didn't feel any of that. Instead, I felt something unexpected. Calm. Not the numb kind of calm that comes from being overwhelmed. It was the quiet clarity you get when a puzzle piece suddenly clicks into place. So instead of arguing, I simply nodded once. "All right." Lauren blinked. The reaction clearly wasn't what she'd expected. Her eyebrows lifted slightly, like she was waiting for the rest of the conversation that never came. "You're okay with that?" she asked. I took another sip of coffee. "If that's what you want." For a moment neither of us spoke. The kitchen filled with the quiet background noise of the refrigerator humming and traffic passing somewhere outside on the street below. Then she shifted slightly against the counter. "Well, I'm actually meeting someone this morning." I looked up again. "Someone?" She nodded, stirring sugar into her coffee slowly. "Kyle." The name hung in the air. Kyle was her ex. They dated before Lauren and I ever met, about 3 years, from what she told me. Their breakup story had always been vague. Something about bad timing, arguments, and wanting different things. At least that's what I'd been told. Apparently Kyle was suddenly back in town. "He messaged me last week," Lauren said casually. "He's visiting Portland for a few days." "And you're meeting him?" I said. "Just coffee," she replied quickly. To catch up. The word just sounded carefully chosen. Not defensive. Confident. Like she already knew how the conversation was supposed to go. Then she added one more sentence. It would probably be better if you didn't come. That part was interesting. She didn't ask? She didn't phrase it like a request. It sounded more like a quiet statement about where I currently stood in her life. And in that moment something very simple clicked inside my head. Because while Lauren was talking about friendship and coffee with an ex, I suddenly realized something about the future I thought we were building together. It might have only existed in my imagination. I closed my laptop slowly and leaned back in my chair. Okay, I said. This time she didn't hide the surprise. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she studied my face, almost like she was searching for the argument she'd expected to happen. But it never came. I wasn't angry. I wasn't upset. If anything, I felt strangely certain. Lauren finished her coffee and set the mug in the sink. Well, she said, grabbing her purse from the counter. I'll probably be gone for a couple hours. All right. She paused near the door, glancing back at me. You're really not going to say anything else? I shook my head. Nope. She hesitated for another second before opening the door. Then she stepped into the hallway and disappeared down the stairs. The apartment fell quiet. For a while I just sat there staring at my laptop screen, listening to the faint sounds of the bakery downstairs starting their morning batch. And that's when I remembered something sitting in my desk drawer. 2 weeks earlier I had bought a ring. Not just any ring. An engagement ring. I had been planning to take Lauren to the Oregon coast that weekend. A small restaurant on a wooden pier overlooking the water. Candlelight, ocean air, the whole thing. The reservation confirmation was still in my email. The receipt for the ring was still in my wallet. But as I sat there in the quiet apartment, one thought kept repeating itself in my mind. If someone can calmly replace a future with you with coffee with their ex, then maybe that future never existed in the first place. So I picked up my phone. And I made my first call of the day. The moment Lauren closed the door behind her, the apartment went completely quiet. For a few seconds I just sat there at the table staring at the laptop screen, even though I wasn't really reading anything anymore. My inbox was still open, emails stacked one under another, but my brain had already moved somewhere else. The smell of fresh bread drifted up from the bakery downstairs. Normally that smell made mornings feel warm. Familiar. That morning it felt strange. Because for the first time since Lauren and I moved into that apartment, I was sitting there realizing I might not actually live this life much longer. Not in the dramatic way people talk about breakups. No shouting. No slammed doors. Just the quiet awareness that the path I thought I was walking down might have ended 20 minutes earlier. I leaned back in the chair and let out a slow breath. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out my wallet. Inside was the folded receipt. The engagement ring. 2 weeks earlier I had walked into a small jewelry store downtown during my lunch break. Nothing fancy, just a quiet place with soft lighting and a glass display case full of rings that probably cost more than the owner's first car. I still remembered the moment I picked it. Simple platinum band. Oval diamond. Not huge. Not flashy. Just something elegant that felt like Lauren. The jeweler had asked when I planned to propose. Soon, I had said. That was the plan. I had already made a reservation at a small restaurant on the Oregon coast for the upcoming weekend. A place built on a wooden pier overlooking the water. Candlelight tables. Ocean air. The kind of place people quietly celebrate important moments. I'd even arranged the timing so we'd arrive right before sunset. The ring wasn't finished yet, it was being resized, but the deposit had been paid. Everything was lined up. Until 10 minutes ago. I stared at the receipt for another moment before folding it slowly and putting it back into my wallet. Then I picked up my phone. The jewelry store opened at 9. It was 8:42. So instead of calling them first, I opened my email and found the reservation confirmation for the restaurant. 2 guests. Saturday, 7:30 p.m. Window table. I looked at the words for a long moment before quietly closing the email. It was strange how quickly plans could become irrelevant. A few minutes later, I opened another message thread. This one was older. Months old, actually. The name at the top of the conversation was Ethan. Ethan and I had been friends since college. We'd worked together at our first job after graduation before our careers went different directions. A year ago, he had moved to Denver to help start a small tech consulting firm. Since then, he had been trying, persistently, to recruit me. Every couple months, he'd send a message. "You still stuck in rainy Portland? Come to Denver. We're hiring." At first, I had always laughed it off. Portland had Lauren. Portland had our apartment. Portland had the life I thought I was building. But that morning the message thread suddenly looked different. I scrolled up and reread one of Ethan's most recent texts from a few weeks earlier. "If you ever get tired of Seattle clients and rain, we've got a position open." I stared at the message for a moment. Then I typed, "Still open?" 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Ethan must have had his phone nearby. "Always open for you." I stared at the screen for a second before typing another message. "Hypothetically, how fast would you need someone to move?" This time the reply took a few seconds longer. Then, "Are you serious right now?" I smiled slightly. "Maybe." Another pause. Then Ethan sent a short voice message. I played it. "Dude, if you're actually serious, I can get you in here next week. We've got a project starting Monday and I trust you with it more than anyone." Next week. The idea felt surreal. Less than an hour earlier I had been planning a proposal on the Oregon coast. Now I was casually discussing moving to another state. But strangely, it didn't feel chaotic. It felt clear. "I'll call you later," I texted back. Then I stood up from the table and walked into the bedroom. Lauren's side of the room looked exactly like it always did. Her jewelry tray sat on the dresser. Her perfume bottle was next to the mirror. The bed was still slightly unmade from the morning. For a moment I just stood there looking at the room, letting the quiet settle. Then I grabbed a suitcase from the closet. I didn't start packing yet. I simply placed it on the bed. Because something in my head had already made the decision. An hour later my phone rang. It was the jewelry store. Perfect timing. "Good morning, this is Marcus from Alder and Stone Jewelers," the voice said politely. "Hi," I replied. "I'm calling about an order." I gave him my name. There was a short pause while he looked up the record. "Ah, yes," Marcus said. "The Oval Platinum engagement ring. We were actually planning to call you today. It's almost ready for pickup." For a brief moment I pictured the ring again. The proposal. The pier. The ocean. Then I spoke. "I'm actually calling to cancel the order." There was a surprised silence on the other end. "Oh," Marcus said carefully. "I see. The deposit is refundable, right?" I asked. "Yes," he replied. "We can process that today." "Thank you." The call ended a few seconds later. Just like that, the proposal stopped existing. I walked back into the living room and sat down at the table again. For a while I answered a few work emails. Nothing complicated. Just small tasks to keep my hands busy while my mind kept quietly rearranging the future. Around noon my phone buzzed. "Lauren." A text. Coffee went shorter than expected. Kyle had to meet someone. I stared at the message. Then another one arrived. "We should talk later tonight." I typed a short reply. "Sure." No anger. No accusations. Just agreement. Because by that point something had already changed. And the strange part was, Lauren didn't know it yet. At 4:15 p.m. I booked a one-way plane ticket to Denver for that evening. The strange thing about making a life-changing decision is how quiet it can feel. You would think something dramatic should happen. A big emotional moment. Some kind of cinematic realization. Instead, my afternoon looked almost boring. I answered emails. Finished a small piece of code for work. Joined a short video meeting with my manager and talked about project deadlines like nothing in my life had shifted. Meanwhile, a plane ticket to Denver sat in my inbox. Departure, 9:40 p.m. One way. Every now and then my eyes drifted to the suitcase sitting on the bed in the other room. I hadn't packed yet. Not because I was unsure. More because I was waiting. Lauren had said she'd be out for a couple hours. I figured she'd probably come home around 5 or 6. Part of me wanted to leave before she returned. Slip out quietly. Avoid the conversation entirely. But something about that felt dishonest. Not cruel, just incomplete. She had started the morning with a sentence that changed everything. It seemed fair that she at least see the result. So I waited. Around 4:50 p.m. I finally stood up and walked into the bedroom. Packing didn't take long. When you remove the emotional weight from a place, most belongings suddenly look temporary. Laptop. Documents. A few pairs of jeans. 2 jackets. My passport. 3 books I'd been meaning to finish. That was most of it. The rest of the apartment stayed exactly the way it was. Lauren's plants on the windowsill. The couch we bought together. The framed photos from our road trip last summer. All of it remained untouched. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because, in that moment, those things no longer belonged to my future. By the time I zipped the suitcase shut, the apartment felt oddly hollow. Not physically. Emotionally. Like a stage after the actors leave. I carried the suitcase into the living room and set it near the door. Then I checked the time. 5:32 p.m. My flight was in 4 hours. Right then I heard footsteps in the hallway outside the apartment. The door unlocked. Lauren stepped inside. She immediately froze. Her eyes moved from the suitcase, to me, and back to the suitcase again. "Why are your bags packed?" Her voice wasn't angry. It sounded confused. Almost amused. Like she assumed there must be some simple explanation. I leaned against the kitchen counter. "You said we should talk tonight," I said calmly. She closed the door slowly behind her. "Yeah." Her eyes stayed locked on the suitcase. "So why are you packed like you're leaving for a trip?" "I am." Now the confusion turned into something sharper. "What trip?" "I'm moving." The silence that followed lasted several seconds. Lauren blinked. Then she laughed. A short, incredulous laugh. "Okay, wait." She dropped her purse on the table and walked toward me. "Moving where?" "Denver." This time the laugh disappeared. "Denver?" I nodded. "Tonight." Her brain clearly struggled to process the timeline. "Wait," she said again. "What do you mean tonight?" "I have a flight in a few hours." She stared at me like I'd just switched languages mid-sentence. "You're serious?" "Yeah." Lauren ran a hand through her hair, pacing once across the living room. This is about what I said this morning, isn't it?" I shrugged slightly. "Partly." Her eyes narrowed. "So you're just leaving?" "Seems like the cleanest solution." "Cleanest solution to what?" she demanded. "To the situation." "What situation?" she repeated. "The one where my girlfriend tells me we're better as friends and then goes to meet her ex for coffee." Her mouth opened slightly. Then closed again. "That's not..." "It's exactly what happened." Lauren exhaled sharply. "You're being dramatic." The sentence didn't bother me. If anything, it made the moment clearer. "Am I?" I asked calmly. "Yes." She crossed her arms. "I said maybe we're better as friends because I've been confused about things." "And you decided the best way to solve that confusion was coffee with your ex." "You're twisting it." "I'm summarizing it." She turned away for a moment, rubbing her forehead. "You didn't even ask how the coffee went. Did it go well?" Lauren hesitated. "That's not the point." I waited. Eventually she answered. "It was fine." "Good." Her eyes flicked toward the suitcase again. So because of that conversation you decided to move to another state in a single day? Not because of the conversation. Then why? I paused for a moment before answering. Because it made something clear. And what exactly became clear? She asked. That the future I thought we were building probably isn't happening. The words hung in the air. Lauren looked genuinely unsettled now. You're overreacting. Maybe. You are, she insisted. People say things when they're figuring stuff out. Sure. So instead of talking about it like adults, you just quit? I didn't quit. Then what is this? She asked, gesturing toward the suitcase. This is me accepting what you said. Her eyes searched my face. Daniel. I didn't break up with you. I tilted my head slightly. You told me we're better as friends. I said maybe. That's usually the beginning of the end. She opened her mouth to argue again but stopped. For a moment the apartment went quiet. Then she asked the question she had been avoiding. When were you planning to tell me? I figured now was a good time. You were just going to leave tonight? Yeah. And what happens to us? She asked. I picked up my car keys from the table. You said it yourself this morning? Her voice softened slightly. Daniel. I met her eyes. We're better as friends. And that's when she finally realized I meant it. Lauren stared at me like she had just stepped onto a moving train she didn't realize was leaving the station. For most of the day she had been calm. Confident. Almost certain that she controlled the direction of the conversation. Now that certainty was gone. You can't be serious, she said quietly. I am. She looked toward the suitcase again like it might disappear if she stared long enough. This is insane, she said. You're moving to another state because of one conversation. It wasn't one conversation. What else was it then? I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I grabbed my phone from the counter and slipped it into my pocket. It was the realization that we're not standing in the same place anymore. Lauren crossed her arms. So instead of talking about it, you just leave? I did talk about it, I replied. When? This morning. Her expression tightened. That wasn't a real conversation. It was real enough. Lauren took a few steps toward the window, staring down at the street outside. The late afternoon light had started turning the buildings across the road orange. For a few seconds she didn't say anything. Then she turned back. So that's it? Pretty much. Her eyes searched my face again, like she was looking for the part where I would soften or hesitate. But the strange thing about decisions like this is that once they settle in your mind, they feel almost mechanical. Not emotional. Just final. Lauren let out a slow breath. You didn't even ask how the coffee actually went. You said it was fine. That's not the point, she said. Then what is the point? She hesitated. I met him because I wanted clarity. About what? About whether the past still meant something. The honesty surprised me a little. But it didn't change anything. And did it? I asked. She didn't answer immediately. That silence told me everything I needed to know. Finally, she said, It's complicated. I nodded. Exactly. That doesn't mean I want him back. But it means you're not sure you don't. Lauren opened her mouth to argue. Then closed it again. The problem with certain truths is that once they're spoken out loud, pretending they aren't there becomes difficult. I just needed to know, she said. And now you do. Her voice softened slightly. Daniel, you're acting like everything is already over. I picked up the handle of my suitcase. You started that conversation this morning. I said maybe. She insisted. And I listened. That's not the same thing. For me it is. Lauren took a step closer. So you're just walking away from 2 years? I'm walking away from uncertainty. That's dramatic. Maybe. She ran her hands through her hair again, clearly frustrated now. You could at least give us a chance to figure things out. I am. How exactly is leaving the city figuring things out? Because it removes the confusion. She stared at me. What confusion? The part where my girlfriend isn't sure if her ex still matters. That's not fair. It's accurate. Lauren looked down at the floor for a moment. Then she asked quietly, "When did you decide this?" "About 4 hours ago." 4 hours? Yeah. That's insane. Maybe. I walked toward the door and picked up the suitcase. Lauren moved quickly, stepping in front of it. "You're really going right now?" "My flight's in 3 hours." Her eyes widened. "You already bought a ticket?" "Yeah. Without telling me. You told me we were better as friends before breakfast." "That's not the same thing." It felt pretty clear. She looked like she wanted to argue again but couldn't find the words. Finally, she asked the question that had been sitting in the room since she walked in. "Were you planning to propose?" I paused. That question surprised me. "How did you?" "You've been acting weird for weeks," she said. "Planning things? Being secretive?" I didn't answer directly. But the silence was enough. Lauren's expression changed instantly. "Oh my God!" Her hand moved slowly to her mouth. "You were going to propose." The realization hit her like a delayed echo. "I had a ring." Her eyes widened even more. "A ring?" "I cancelled it this morning." For a moment Lauren didn't move at all. Then she whispered, "You cancelled it?" "Yeah." The apartment went completely silent again. Outside, a car passed slowly on the street. Lauren looked at me differently now. Not confused. Not defensive. Just stunned. "I didn't know," she said quietly. "You didn't ask." "I didn't think." "I know." She took a step closer. "Daniel, this isn't how this was supposed to go." "That's the thing about decisions," I replied. "Once they're said out loud, they start moving." Her eyes flicked toward the door. "You're really leaving?" "Yes." "And you're not coming back?" I thought about that question for a moment. Then I shook my head. "No." Lauren stood there for several seconds, like she was waiting for something to stop the moment from continuing. But nothing did. Finally, she asked one last question. "What am I supposed to do now?" I opened the door. "That part," I said calmly, "is up to you." Then I stepped into the hallway and pulled the door closed behind me. Airports have a strange way of simplifying your thoughts. Maybe it's the constant motion. People arriving, people leaving, suitcases rolling across polished floors like quiet reminders that everyone is going somewhere else. By the time I reached the terminal that night, the day already felt like something that had happened weeks ago instead of hours. I checked my suitcase, passed security, and found a seat near the window overlooking the runway. The sky over Portland had turned dark blue, the last strip of sunset fading behind the mountains. For the first time all day, my phone buzzed. "Lauren." One message. "We need to talk." I stared at the screen for a moment. Then another message appeared. "You can't just leave like that." Then another. "Daniel, please answer." The messages kept coming. This isn't how relationships end. "You didn't even let me explain. Are you seriously getting on a plane right now?" I didn't reply. Not because I was trying to punish her. I simply didn't see anything left to explain. About 10 minutes later, my phone started ringing. "Lauren." I watched the name appear on the screen. Then disappear when the call ended. Then appear again. After the third call, I switched the phone to silent and slipped it into my pocket. Across the terminal, a boarding announcement echoed over the speakers. Denver. That word still felt slightly surreal. Less than 12 hours earlier, I had been planning a proposal. Now I was boarding a one-way flight to another state. But strangely, the decision still felt calm. Not impulsive. Just aligned. When the boarding line opened, I stood up, grabbed my backpack, and joined the slow movement of passengers heading toward the gate. No dramatic moment. No last-minute hesitation. Just another step forward. The flight took a little over 2 hours. By the time the plane descended toward Denver, the city lights stretched across the ground like a giant grid of quiet possibilities. Ethan texted as soon as I landed. You actually did it? I smiled slightly. Yeah. 3 dots appeared. Then another message. Dude, I'm picking you up. Ethan hadn't changed much since college. Same messy hair. Same constant energy. The moment I stepped out of the terminal, he spotted me immediately. There he is! He pulled me into a quick half-hug, half-shoulder punch. You're insane, he said. Probably. He grabbed my suitcase and started walking toward the parking garage. So let me get this straight. He continued. You break up with your girlfriend and move to Denver in the same day? She said we were better as friends. Ethan stopped walking for a second. That's what she said? Yeah. He let out a long whistle. Well, that's a bold strategy. I agreed with her. Ethan burst out laughing. Oh man, you actually did the literal interpretation. Pretty much. He shook his head as we reached his car. You know what this is called, right? What? Malicious compliance. I opened the passenger door. Something like that. Ethan's apartment was in a newer building downtown. Not huge, but modern. Clean lines, big windows, the kind of place that looked like someone had just finished furnishing it. You can crash here for a few days, he said. Until we figure out something more permanent. Thanks. No problem. He tossed my suitcase onto the floor near the couch. So, job starts Monday if you want it. That fast? Startup life. I nodded. That works. Ethan opened the fridge and handed me a beer. To impulsive life decisions, he said. I raised the bottle. To clarity. We clinked bottles. For the first time all day, I actually felt something close to relief. Around midnight I finally checked my phone again. Lauren had sent 13 messages. The tone had shifted. The first few were angry. You're being ridiculous. People say things when they're emotional. You didn't even try to understand what I meant. Then the tone changed. Where are you? Are you safe? Please answer me. The final message was shorter. I didn't think you would actually leave. I read the sentence twice. Then locked the phone. The next morning my phone rang again. This time the name on the screen wasn't Lauren. It was Megan. Lauren's best friend. I answered. Hello? Daniel, Megan said immediately. What the hell happened? Lauren told me we were better as friends. She didn't mean it like that. How did she mean it? She was just confused. And now? Megan hesitated. She didn't think you'd actually leave. I looked out the apartment window at the Denver skyline. Yeah, I said quietly. I know. Megan sighed. She's freaking out. That's understandable. Are you coming back? No. Another pause. You're serious? Yeah. Megan sounded almost impressed. Well, damn. Then she said something interesting. You know, she told everyone you two were going to the coast this weekend. I know. She thought you were going to propose. I didn't answer. That's what I thought, Megan said softly. There was a long silence. Finally, she asked the same question Lauren had asked the night before. What happens now? I leaned back against the couch. Now we're friends. 3 days after I arrived in Denver, Lauren finally understood that I hadn't taken some dramatic cooling-off trip. I had actually moved. The first sign was a message that came late at night. Megan told me you started a new job. Is that true? I read it while sitting in Ethan's kitchen finishing some onboarding paperwork. I didn't answer. Another message followed. Daniel, please tell me you didn't actually leave Portland for good. Then another. I didn't mean what I said that morning the way it sounded. That sentence stood out. Not I was wrong. Not I'm sorry. Just that it didn't sound the way she intended. An hour later she called. This time I answered. Her voice was quieter than usual. Are you really in Denver? Yeah. A long silence followed. I didn't think you'd take it that seriously. I leaned back in the chair. You said we're better as friends. Another pause. Then she said softly, almost to herself, I thought you'd fight for us. A week later, Lauren called again. This time her tone had changed. No confusion. No anger. Just something heavier. Can we talk for a minute? She asked. Sure. She hesitated before speaking. I ran into Kyle yesterday. That's convenient. It wasn't like that, she said quickly. Actually, it kind of made things clear. Clear how? She exhaled slowly. I realized something. I waited. That morning I said maybe we're better as friends because I expected you to argue, she admitted. I thought you'd convince me I was wrong. And instead? You just agreed. There was a long pause. I didn't realize one sentence could actually end a relationship, she said quietly. I looked out the window at the Denver skyline. Sometimes, I replied. One sentence tells you everything you need to know. Neither of us spoke after that. Because by then the answer had already happened.